Her name was Madison. The night before her bachelorette party, she kissed me on the cheek and told me, "Tomorrow's just for fun, babe. Don't worry, no wild stuff. Just me and the girls." Right. Just the girls. She came back the next morning with glitter in her hair and tequila on her breath. No texts during the night. No check-ins. She didn't even notice the tension in my jaw when she walked in. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her smile was strained. I asked her flat out, "Did something happen?" She laughed. Not the usual way, not that full-bodied laugh that made me fall for her in the first place. This one was tight. Corner-of-the-mouth stuff. It was just a silly night. The girls hired a dancer. It got a little out of hand. It didn't mean anything. My chest didn't explode. It sank. Like a foundation finally caving in after years of pressure. "You slept with him?" I asked. Voice like ash. She bit her lip. Didn't answer. And then as she said it, "You can cheat on me too, if you want. We'll be even." Even. Like love is math. Like dignity's a variable you can cancel out with a strip show and a shrug. I didn't shout. Didn't throw anything. I just stared at her for a few seconds too long, then turned and started packing. "You're seriously leaving," she said, following me. "Over one mistake?" I didn't respond. If I opened my mouth, I'd say something I couldn't take back. Or worse, something I could. An hour later, I was gone. Left the tux hanging on the closet door. She could have it. And that should have been the end, right? Wrong. A week later, I got a letter. Certified mail. From her parents. No flowers. No apology. Just a $50,000 bill. Itemized. Venue deposit, $12,000. Catering, $9,500. Dress alterations, $1,300. Custom invitations, $4,000. Family travel costs, $7,200. And so on. "This is all your fault," her father wrote in a little note stapled to the front. "We expect you to take responsibility like a man." Like a man. Right. Because being a man means footing the bill for someone else's betrayal. According to him, I should have just smiled and walked her down the aisle like a loyal lapdog in a rental suit. I didn't pay. I lawyered up. Filed a counterclaim. Emotional damages, breach of implied contract, and since they put everything in writing, including that glorious letter blaming me, my attorney nearly laughed with glee. Then came the next morning. 67 missed calls. Text from her. From her mom. From her dad. Even from some of the bridesmaids who used to side-eye me at brunch. "Please just talk to me. This is all a misunderstanding. You're overreacting. Don't do this." The irony? Every single one of those texts was proof that the mask had finally slipped. The perfect family. The golden daughter. The future I nearly signed up for. Now I know better. There's a special kind of cold that comes when someone tries to drag your name through the mud in cursive. When I got that bill in the mail, I didn't just see numbers. I saw the handwriting of people who thought I was weak. Who thought I'd fold. I didn't fold. I hired Laura Kim. Laura wasn't just a lawyer. She was a scalpel in a world of sledgehammers. Sharp. Precise. Dangerous. The moment she read the letter, she smiled like a shark sniffing blood in the water. "They sent this?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "They did. And they're expecting you to pay for a wedding your fiancé sabotaged by sleeping with a stripper named Marco." She blinked once. Of course his name is Marco. We filed a counterclaim the same day. Breach of implied contract. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Fraudulent misrepresentation. And Laura's personal favorite, public defamation of character. Because what I didn't mention. They'd already started whispering. Madison's parents had money. Not old money, not generational wealth, but the kind of cash that buys clout in a small-town circle. They started making calls. He couldn't handle the pressure. He got cold feet. She made a mistake, sure, but he's being dramatic. They wanted to spin a story. So I handed them a script, with a subpoena attached. But here's where it gets interesting. That dancer she hooked up with? Marco? Turns out Madison didn't meet him that night. She'd met him weeks earlier. Laura's investigator, a wiry little guy named Dean with a perpetual energy drink in his hand, tracked Marco down at a second-rate nightclub 2 towns over. Claimed he'd met Madison at a private charity fundraiser. Yeah, charity. She was real flirty, Marco said on tape. Told me she was having doubts about her engagement. We hung out after. A few times. That changed everything. It wasn't a one-night mistake. It was premeditated. She was cheating before the Bachelorette party ever happened. I remember sitting in my apartment, lights off, just listening to that audio recording on repeat. There's something surreal about hearing the man who wrecked your future talk about it like he's describing a sandwich. Meanwhile, Madison kept texting. The tone had shifted now. Less panic, more guilt. I wasn't thinking straight. I thought you didn't really want to marry me. My parents are just trying to protect me. Can we please just talk? I ignored every single one. Because this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all of them. Her father, who looked me in the eye over Thanksgiving dinner and said, "You're the kind of man I'd trust with my daughter." Her mother, who helped pick the wedding venue and hugged me when I signed the catering contract. They smiled at me while their daughter was planning her exit. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to let Laura Kim burn the paper trail they started. The court date was set for 4 weeks later. Just enough time for them to stew in it. But before we ever got there, I got an email. Not from Madison. From her ex-best friend. "You don't know me well, but I think you should see this. I'm tired of watching her play the victim." Attached were screenshots. Dozens. Texts. Photos. Videos. Madison bragging about the affair. About how she had a backup plan if things didn't work out. Laughing at how he'll never leave me. I'm the best thing he'll ever get. She didn't just cheat. She wagered my loyalty against her ego. I sent the files to Laura. She called me 20 minutes later. "They don't have a case anymore. But we do. How public do you want this to get?" I paused. Looked at the engagement photo still on my desk. Her hand on my chest. My smile, too wide to be fake. Back when I believed her. "How public?" I repeated. I leaned back in my chair. "All the way. They say courtrooms are for justice." That's cute. In my experience, courtrooms are theaters. And the show they put on? It's got all the drama of a soap opera. Except the consequences are real. The day we walked into that courthouse, her whole family showed up dressed like they were attending a funeral. Maybe they were. Her father in a gray pinstripe suit, jaw locked so tight it looked welded shut. Her mother with the pearls, always the pearls, like they could strangle the truth before it ever made it past her lipstick. And Madison? White blouse, soft makeup, hair curled just so. The picture of innocence. You'd almost forget she once told me I could cheat to make it even. But I remembered. And so did Laura. We took our seats. The judge, a stone-faced woman in her 60s with eyes like flint, called it to order. Her name was Judge Brighton, and from the way she looked over her glasses, I knew. She'd seen enough lies in her courtroom to spot one before it walked through the door. Their side started with opening remarks, laced with all the fluff they could muster. "Your Honor, the emotional distress our clients experienced after the abrupt cancellation of this wedding." Laura stood. "Objection. The wedding was not canceled abruptly. It was canceled after my client discovered the bride-to-be had been sleeping with another man." Judge Brighton raised an eyebrow. "Objection sustained. Move it along, counselor." Her father shot daggers at me from across the room. I didn't blink. Then came our turn. Laura rose, smooth and cold. "Your Honor, we'll be demonstrating not only that Mr. Ellis, that's me, was justified in terminating the engagement, but that the plaintiffs engaged in a willful smear campaign to cover their daughter's infidelity and deflect financial responsibility onto the victim." She handed the judge a binder. One for opposing counsel, too. Inside, the texts, the screenshots, Marco's voice recording, the burner account emails. "Exhibit A through G, Your Honor," Laura said like she was announcing the weather. "I'd recommend Exhibit C for entertainment value." The courtroom was silent. Dead silent. Except for Madison, who suddenly looked like she might throw up. Judge Brighton skimmed a few pages. Her lips pressed tighter with every line. Then she asked a question no one on their side was prepared for. "Miss Madison, do you deny the relationship with Mr. Marco Alvarez prior to your bachelorette party?" Madison's voice cracked. "It wasn't a relationship. It was a mistake. A one-time thing." Laura stood again. Per the attached screenshots, Your Honor, the defendant referred to Mr. Alvarez as, quote, Plan B and the kind of man who knows how to show a girl a good time. There are repeated references to meetups over a 3-week span prior to the party. Judge Brighton narrowed her eyes. "Miss Madison, I suggest you stop speaking unless it's under oath." And just like that, the narrative shifted. Her mother whispered frantically to her husband. He wouldn't look at her. For the first time since this mess began, cracks were showing. Not in my story, but in theirs. They thought I'd walk away. Quietly. Embarrassed. Instead, I showed up with evidence. A lawyer who eats entitled people for breakfast, and the one thing they never expected. my dignity still intact. The hearing adjourned for lunch. I walked past them all without a word. But Madison reached out, brushed my arm like a ghost begging for attention. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. I stopped, looked her dead in the eye, and said it. "You meant for me to happen. You meant to have your night out, your plan B, your rich daddy to foot the bill if things went south. But the one thing you didn't plan for was me finally walking away." Her eyes welled up, but I didn't care. I'd mourned what we had already. Now I was watching what they built come undone. The courtroom after lunch had a different energy. Before, it felt like they were leading a parade and I was the rain. But now the storm was theirs to weather. Madison sat stiffly beside her attorney, mascara barely clinging to the corners of her eyes. Her father had gone silent, arms crossed, lips curled inward like he was chewing on the bitterness of losing control. And I sat back, calm, composed. The man they all thought would break had learned how to bend and sharpen. Judge Brighton didn't waste time. She wasn't one for theatrics. No long speeches. No gavel-slamming drama. After reviewing the evidence presented, it is the opinion of this court that the defendant, she glanced at me, was fully justified in terminating the engagement due to the plaintiff's breach of implied marital contract and deception. The $50,000 claim for wedding expenses is denied. Her gavel struck once, sharp as a gunshot. But she wasn't done. Furthermore, based on the presented communications, I find grounds for the defendant's counterclaim. Emotional distress and reputational damage caused by malicious misrepresentation. Settlement is awarded in the amount of $27,500. Cue silence. Not a pin drop kind. A funeral kind. The kind where everyone realizes the coffin wasn't yours. Madison's mom gasped. Her dad muttered something about bias and nonsense, but the judge cut him off before he could finish the sentence. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I did look straight at Madison when I stood up and tucked in my chair. This was never about money, I told her. It was about truth. You buried it for months. I just dug it up. They left in a flurry of indignation and smeared mascara. I walked out alone. No entourage. No fake hugs. Just the warm sunlight on my face and the feeling of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. But life's not done just because the gavel drops. I was halfway through a celebratory beer at my apartment when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it. But something told me to answer. Hello. A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years. Hey, is this Eric? Eric Ellis. Yeah. Who's this? This is Taylor. Taylor Green. We went to high school together. You dated Madison, right? I sat up, bottle halfway to my lips. Yeah. What? Another pause. Because I think you should know something. Madison did this before. To someone else. My brother. She lied, ruined him, left him with nothing. And I've got messages, voice memos. Proof. Stuff I never thought I'd share. But after seeing your name in the court announcements, I figured maybe it's time someone finally called her out for good. I set the beer down. Because I thought the chapter was closed. Turns out, Madison wasn't just a mistake. She was a pattern. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one who needed justice. I used to think karma was a bedtime story. A moral fable for people who needed comfort when life didn't give them justice. But now I know better. Karma doesn't knock. She lets herself in. Taylor Green wasn't just some old high school friend. She was the kind of person who remembered everything. The dates, the names, the lies Madison had told a decade before I ever slipped a ring onto her finger. My brother's name was Danny, she said, her voice tight. He was soft-spoken, artsy. Fell for Madison his senior year, hard. She made him believe they were building a future. Said she loved how different he was. Sound familiar? It should. It's the same script she used on me. Then one day, Taylor continued, he gets a text. From Madison. No call. No conversation. Just a message that said, we're not a match. I'm seeing someone else who gets me better. Brutal? Sure. But people break up all the time, right? Yeah. Except the next day, Danny finds out that someone else was his college roommate. Madison had been hooking up with him behind Danny's back. And when he confronted her, she flipped it. Told everyone he had been controlling. That he was unstable. She even spread rumors at his college orientation. Whispers that stuck to his name like glue. It nearly cost him his scholarship. And just like that, he vanished from our town. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. Taylor was silent for a moment on the call. Then she said the words that changed everything. I've got screenshots. From her old number. Voicemails too. She used to brag to me about it, back when I was too dumb to see her for what she was. I saved them because I thought one day, someone might need them. I needed them. And oh, did we use them? Laura Kim's eyes lit up when I forwarded the files. Old texts, Facebook messages, even an audio recording where Madison laughed about cutting off Danny like a tumor. This, she said, holding up the phone, isn't just a pattern. This is a profile. We filed a motion to amend the public record of the case, entered the new material as supplemental evidence. Not because it would change the outcome, but because I wanted truth on the record. I didn't want just a courtroom win. I wanted clarity for anyone else who might cross paths with her charm, her crocodile tears, her sickening ability to weaponize sympathy. And then we went further. Laura drafted a letter to the state bar. Madison's father? Turns out he was a partner at a local law firm. A firm that publicly touted their family values. We didn't accuse him of any legal wrongdoing, but we submitted evidence of his attempt to sue me knowing full well about his daughter's infidelity. The bar took interest. We also tipped off a local reporter. Small-town legal drama with screenshots of a wedding-turn lawsuit? That stuff sells. They ran the story with a headline I'll never forget. From vows to verdict, how one groom turned the tables on a $50,000 wedding scam. My name was redacted, but Madison's wasn't. Her father's wasn't. And the screenshots? Blurred just enough to be legal, but clear enough for anyone familiar to recognize who they belonged to. I didn't gloat. Didn't post a single thing. But when I saw that the wedding venue had quietly removed their family's portrait from their testimonials page, yeah, that felt good. The last I heard, Madison's parents were dealing with internal firm issues, and she'd been laying low, avoiding social media. A few mutuals even told me she was devastated, humiliated, struggling to trust again. Good. She shouldn't trust easily, not after building a life out of betrayal. As for me, I kept the ring, pawned it, put the money toward a solo trip through the Rockies, found peace on mountain trails and in places where no one knew my story. But now you do. Because this isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming yourself when someone tries to write your ending for you. Colorado wasn't a healing trip. Not at first. It was an escape, plain and simple. A way to swap courtroom suits for hiking boots and silence out the noise of betrayal with wind-whipped cliffs and pine-scented air. I didn't go looking for clarity. I went looking for distance. But the thing about solitude? It forces you to hear your own thoughts. And after everything I'd been through, those thoughts weren't pretty. I kept replaying it, her voice, her shrug, the way she weaponized, will be even like forgiveness could be bought with sin. And then, on day 4, somewhere near Telluride, I met her. Her name was Riley. I was drinking black coffee on a cold wooden bench outside a trailhead cafe when this woman walked past me with a beat-up Nikon, tangled hair, and hiking boots that had seen more of the world than most people ever would. She glanced down at the paperback on my lap, The Count of Monte Cristo. Irony, right? That's a hell of a revenge story, she said. I looked up. Fitting. She raised an eyebrow. You plotting something? I thought about lying. Then I remembered I didn't owe anyone a fake version of myself anymore. Already executed it, I said. Now I'm just trying to remember who I was before all that. She sat down. Just like that. No hesitation. Like sitting next to someone scarred wasn't scary. Like maybe she had scars of her own. And we talked. For hours. Turns out, Riley was a travel photographer. Not the Instagram fame kind, the real kind. The kind who lived out of a backpack, took photos that ended up in National Geographic, and spent more nights in hostels than hotels. She was passing through Colorado on her way to a photo job in Utah. I told her everything. The fiancé, the betrayal, the lawsuit, even the part where I didn't recognize myself for a while, where I'd wondered if maybe she was right, and I had been too boring, too loyal, too safe. And Riley? She didn't flinch. She just looked at me and said, "You weren't too safe. You were solid. People who are hollow don't know how to hold weight. They need chaos to distract from the emptiness." That hit like a freight train. We hiked the next day, then the one after that. 2 people running from different demons, finding breath together in thin air. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was real, honest, unfiltered. Until, on the 5th night, she asked, "If she called you tomorrow, said she regretted it, that she missed you, would you go back?" The question stabbed deeper than I expected. Not because I didn't know the answer. Because I did. No, I said. Not even to spit in her shadow. And that was the moment. That was when I realized the revenge was complete, not in the courtroom, not in the headlines, not in the payout, but in this. Sitting across from someone who didn't pity me, who didn't try to fix me, who just listened and saw me. That night, under a sky so clear it looked fake, we kissed. No promises. No delusions. Just two people willing to try again, not because we forgot the past, but because we finally understood our worth beyond it. Closure is a myth they sell you in therapy pamphlets and sappy movies. It's rarely clean. It's rarely mutual. Most of the time, it's one person standing in the wreckage saying, "I'm done," while the other's still trying to light a match. And Madison? She wasn't done. It started with an email. Subject line, "Please." It had been nearly 2 months since the court ruling and over 6 weeks since the story broke online. I figured she'd gone silent out of shame or damage control. But no, Madison never goes quiet. She just waits until she's sure you're breathing easy again. Then she pounces. I opened the email on instinct. Should have deleted it. Should have marked it as spam and gone back to Riley's messages about sunrise hikes and Thai noodles in Moab. But I didn't. Curiosity's a stubborn animal. Inside, I know I hurt you. I know I messed up. But we were good once, right? We laughed. We dreamed. We were a team. I miss that more than I can say. She rambled on about the memories, about the pressure from her family, about how she didn't know how to be loved by someone who actually meant it. Said she was getting therapy now. Said she'd cut ties with toxic people and was working on herself. And then came the real reason she reached out. Would you consider meeting me? Just to talk. No expectations. Just honesty. Maybe we both need it. I read the message twice. Then again. Then sat back, letting the absurdity settle in. Let me be clear. This wasn't about guilt. Or growth. Or honesty. This was about control. She couldn't stand that I walked away without begging. That I didn't orbit her guilt like a loyal moon. That I'd won, not just in court, but in spirit. And now she wanted back in. Not into my life. Into the narrative. To repaint the ending. To soften her role. To rewrite herself as a victim of confusion, not calculation. I didn't respond. But I didn't delete it either. Instead, I forwarded it to Laura to archive. Just in case. And then I did something petty. Something satisfying. I took a photo. Just one. Riley and I, smiling on top of a sandstone cliff, her windblown hair tangled in mine, the sky behind us so open it looked like freedom incarnate. I posted it with one word, unburied. Did Madison see it? Probably. Because that night, she sent one final message. Short. Cold. Resigned. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. There it was. The last breath of a fire she'd started with lies and tried to smother with nostalgia. But I didn't need her hope. I had my own, and I'd earned it. You'd think after court battles, exposés, and 67 missed calls, the truth would finally run dry. But betrayal? It's got layers. And just when you think you've scraped the bottom of the barrel, someone else shows up with a shovel and says, "You missed a spot." That someone was Allison, Madison's maid of honor. A woman I always thought was more set piece than substance. Polite smiles, Pinterest boards, and barely their conversations over wine tastings and linen swatches. She was the one who toasted us at the engagement party with forced enthusiasm and a little too much champagne. I thought she was just another bridesmaid riding Madison's social coattails. Until she messaged me out of nowhere. I need 5 minutes. I owe you that much. I almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity, again, got the better of me. So we met. Neutral ground. A quiet cafe near the outskirts of town where no one would recognize us. She showed up in sunglasses and tension, fidgeting with her car keys like she might bolt at any moment. Then she said it. She never planned to marry you. Just like that. Like a blade pulled from a pocket. I blinked. Come again. Madison. She wasn't going to go through with it. Not all the way. The dancer, Marco? That wasn't a mistake. It was an exit strategy. She told me, she said if she felt trapped, she'd force your hand. Make you walk away so she wouldn't have to be the bad guy. Every part of me froze. And then something inside broke, not in pain, but in clarity. She used me, I said. Allison nodded. She used all of us. Turns out, the wedding was a chessboard. Every move calculated. She knew she couldn't fake happiness forever. Couldn't fake monogamy, either. But instead of calling it off like a grown adult, she created a situation where I'd be the one to end it. That way she could say she tried. She even said, Allison hesitated, then exhaled, he'll walk away. He's too proud to stay if I slip just once. And if he doesn't? Then maybe I'll know he really loves me. I laughed. A sharp, bitter bark of disbelief. So it was a loyalty test? No, she said, eyes hard. It was an escape plan with a Bill and sob story. And here's the kicker, Allison helped her plan the party. Helped book the venue. Arranged the surprise dancer. Even gave Madison the condom, thinking it was all part of some last hurrah joke. It wasn't until later that she pieced it together. That this wasn't some spontaneous soups. This was deliberate. And now? Allison wanted to come clean. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. But you deserve the truth. And I'm tired of pretending I didn't help her burn the house down. I stared at her for a long time, then said the only thing I could. You didn't light the match, but you handed her the gasoline. She nodded. Took it. No excuses. Just guilt and coffee gone cold. And weirdly, I respected that. At least she told the truth. You know what's poetic? Watching the man who tried to bill you $50,000 for his daughter's betrayal squirm under the weight of his own name. The letter came on heavy cream stationery. Gold embossing. Signature ink in a shade so pretentious I could practically smell the cologne on it. Richard Lane, Esquire. Father of the bride. Senior partner at Lane and Crowley LLP. He wrote in the kind of tone that pretends to be diplomatic but bleeds desperation if you tilt the page just right. Eric. Mr. Ellis, actually. In light of recent events, I believe it would be prudent for us to speak privately, man to man. There's been fallout. Fallout. That's what he called it. Not consequences, not truth finally catching up, not the bitter taste of your own hypocrisy. Just fallout. Like his daughter detonating her own life with a hired torso and a backup plan was an act of God. Turns out, the Bar Association had launched an internal ethics review. Apparently, suing your future son-in-law for emotional damages while suppressing knowledge of your daughter's infidelity isn't just shady, it's career suicide. Especially when it ends up in a public court record attached to an expose read by half the state's legal community. I know because Laura texted me with the best 3 words I'd read in months. Formal investigation opened. According to her, whispers were already moving through local firms. Clients were pulling back. Referral networks were suddenly reevaluating their alignment. See, guys like Richard Lane don't fear judgment. They fear reputation rot. They fear being seen as the problem, not just by peers, but by the elite crowd they spent decades appeasing with handshakes and curated charity auctions. He offered to meet. Offered a check. $20,000. To put this unfortunate situation behind us. I didn't respond. Not out of principle. Not out of pride. Out of calculation. Because I knew the story wasn't done writing itself. 2 days later, I got a call from a former associate at Lane and Crowley. Someone I barely remembered meeting at the engagement party, but who apparently remembered me very well. Thought you should know, she said, voice low. There's talk of Richard being asked to step down. Not officially. Not yet. But the partners are tired of the bad press. Some of us. Never liked the way he weaponized family for optics. Weaponized family. Yeah, that tracked. I thanked her, hung up, and poured myself a drink. This wasn't revenge. It was recalibration. A man who once sat across from me at dinner, smiling like he'd just handed over his daughter to a loyal shepherd, now watching his own wolves come for him. He wanted to play man-to-man? Then let's talk man-to-man. You raised a liar. You tried to sue me for holding her accountable. Now the rod in your house is dragging you down by the collar, and for once, you don't get to bill someone else for the damage. I didn't send that letter. Didn't have to. The silence was louder. There's something terrifying about honesty, not the kind you perform, but the kind that stands naked in the daylight and says, here's who I was when everything went to hell. Riley found the article on her own. I didn't point her to it. I didn't need to. We were in a cabin just outside Moab. No cell service, no internet, just firelight and the smell of juniper smoke. The kind of quiet that makes even your heartbeat feel intrusive. When we finally rolled back into town to restock supplies, she pulled out her phone and froze. Eric, what's this? I looked at the screen. A familiar headline. From vows to verdict, the groom who said no. My past. Splayed out on a digital stage for the world to gawk at. There it was, Madison's name. Her betrayal. The court case. My countersuit. The $50,000 invoice. Everything except Riley's name. Thank God. She didn't speak for a long time. Just scrolled. Then she looked up. Her eyes weren't angry. They weren't even shocked. They were measuring. You didn't tell me it was all this public, she said. I didn't know how. But you told me the story. I told you the truth. I just left out the press tour. She sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders tense. Not running, but bracing. "You want to know what scares me?" she asked. "It's not that she cheated. Not the lawsuit. Not even the court win. It's that you buried all that pain so well, I couldn't see the seams. And there it was. The fear behind her silence. That maybe I wasn't healed. That maybe what she saw now on hikes and laughter, between kisses, was just a reconstruction built on wreckage." I sat beside her, quiet. And then, without trying to clean it up, I said the only thing that mattered. "I'm not over it. I'm past it. Big difference. It still pisses me off sometimes. Still haunts my dreams once in a while. But I didn't bring you into my life to fix anything. I brought you in because I finally had room." She didn't say anything right away, just rested her head on my shoulder. After a while, she whispered, "Okay. Not I forgive you. Not let's forget this happened. Just okay." That's how you know someone's real. Not because they see the shiny parts and smile, but because they see the scratches on the surface, the scars underneath, and they don't flinch. Later that night, she tossed her phone on the table, straddled my lap, and said, "You know what I like about you?" "What?" "You burned down the fantasy and came out with your spine intact." We didn't talk about Madison again. We didn't need to. Because Riley wasn't interested in who I was before everything. She was interested in the man who survived it, with his honesty brutal, his eyes wide open, and his heart still intact. Of all the names I thought I'd never see again, Marco Alvarez was in the top 3. There it was, staring back at me in glossy cursive on an envelope that looked like it had been dipped in irony. "Marco and Jaden invite you to celebrate their love." At first, I thought it was a prank, but the return address checked out. Denver. The venue? Some rooftop wedding factory downtown, expensive, photogenic, soul-crushing. You know the type. Inside the envelope, neatly folded, a custom card with gold trim, vegan meal options, a handwritten note on the back. "I know you probably never want to hear from me again, but I'm marrying the man who made me believe I was more than a paycheck and a prop. I'm not proud of how we met, but I'm grateful for where it led me. If there's any part of you that's curious what peace looks like after chaos, you've got a seat at our table. Marco." You read something like that, and it does a weird thing to your gut. Not anger, not pride, just this quiet, acidic twist of what the hell is this guy playing at? The man who helped unravel my engagement, the final nail in a coffin built with stilettos and glitter lotion, now asking me to toast him over vegan stuffed eggplant? I left the invite on the kitchen counter. Didn't touch it for 3 days. Riley found it. Picked it up while making coffee. "Marco?" "As anew." "Yup." She set it down. "Are we going?" I raised an eyebrow. "We." She shrugged. "I've got a black dress I've been dying to wear. Besides, I kind of want to see what he looks like in the daylight." We went. Not because I forgave him, but because closure sometimes wears a suit and serves canapes. The venue was every bit the overstyled Instagram trap you'd expect. Edison bulbs. Macrame altar. Vows read in that breathy, over-rehearsed tone that sounds more like an audition than a promise. Marco looked different. Less swagger. More grounded. Still chiseled like a Roman statue, but this time there was a nervous twitch in his hand when he slid the ring onto Jaden's finger. After the ceremony, he found me during cocktail hour. "Eric," he said, extending a hand. "Didn't think you'd come." I didn't take it. "You sent me a wedding invitation. That's not exactly subtle." He nodded, swallowed, then looked me dead in the eye. "I didn't know she was engaged when we first met. She told me you were some ex who wouldn't let go." I let that sit. Let him feel the weight of it. By the time I found out the truth, I was already in the mess. I told myself it wasn't my responsibility, that it wasn't my problem to fix. And I was wrong. He paused. "You lost more than a wedding. You lost time. You lost trust. I helped take that from you." Then he did something no one had done. He apologized. Not the corporate kind. Not the, "I'm sorry if you felt hurt," garbage Madison mastered like a second language. Just, "I was wrong. I hurt you. And I'm sorry." I didn't say much. Just nodded. Because I didn't need to shame. I had my own closure. Still, I said one thing before walking away. "You married someone honest. Guard that. Don't confuse it for weakness." He nodded. Voice low. "I won't." Riley and I left before the cake. On the drive back, she glanced at me and smiled. That felt anticlimactic. "Yeah," I said. "It's weird. You wait for justice to feel like fire. Sometimes it's just a slow sigh." Then she reached across the console, took my hand, and said, "Or maybe it's finally being able to breathe."